Good morning. I'm Gregory Longini, the Secretary to the Chicago Transit Board. On March 3rd of this year, the Board Office issued a notice of change format to the Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee of the Chicago Transit. Good morning. And the Transit I'm Gregory Longini itself scheduled for today. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, on March 5th, 2021, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker renewed the disaster proclamation in effect for Illinois to address this emergency. Section 12 of that proclamation declares that in-person attendance of more than 10 people is not feasible in light of public health concerns. This means that the Chicago Transit Authority public meeting occurring today, March 10th, 2021, will take place only virtually. Because the disaster proclamation is still in effect in the state of Illinois, this meeting is being held pursuant to the amended provision of the Open Meetings Act, that is Section 7E, which allows for virtual public meetings so long as the disaster proclamation is in effect. Chairman Silva, we are ready to begin the March 10th Finance, Audit, and Budget Committee meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to call to order the March 10, 2021 meeting of the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Will the Secretary call the roll?
Yes. Director Miller.
Here.
Director Irvine.
Here.
Director Jakes.
Here.
Director Alvarez.
Here.
Chairman Silva.
Here.
We have a quorum with all 5 members of the committee present. Let the record also show that President Carter and General Counsel Karen Simons are also participating in the meeting, and that Ms. Simons and myself are in the building here at 567 West Lake Street, the headquarters building. Director Silva, we may now proceed to agenda item number 2.
Our first order of business is the approval of the committee minutes of February 10, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Jakes and Irvine. Director Miller.
Yes.
Director Irvine.
Yes.
Director Jakes.
Yes.
Director Alvarez.
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
The motion is approved, 5 yes votes. We may proceed to number 3.
Our next order of business is the finance report. Jeremy Fine, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'll be presenting the results for January 2021. Next page, please. With regard to revenues for January, we see positive variance to budget for both fare box and passes. We see almost $900,000 of positive variance on fare box and $700,000 for passes, giving us a total of $1.6 million of positive variance for the month of January on fare and pass totals. Obviously, this is significantly different than what we've seen over the last year. But just as a reminder, this is a comparison to a post-COVID outbreak budget. So again, we were adjusting our expectations for the current environment that we're operating in. Whereas in our prior reports for 2020, we were comparing to the original 2020 budget. So we see some positive variance here for the first time in a while. Reduced fare subsidy is flat to budget, but again, as a reminder, the state over the last several years has cut our subsidy from 28 million down to 14, but we adjusted the budget accordingly. But again, that's a reduced subsidy from the state for reduced fare subsidies. Non-fare box totals coming in a little lower than expected due to a reduction in the subsidy that we receive from the city for ground transportation tax funding, as well as an adjustment to non-capital grant revenues. So overall, for the month of January, we end up essentially flat, slightly down about $300,000 to budget. But again, substantially different than what we've seen over the course of the last 9 months or so. Next page, please. With regard to our expenses, we continue to do a very good job of controlling our expenses. We see labor coming in slightly favorable to budget by about $1.9 million. Again, we benefited from very good weather in January. Materials was essentially flat, slightly down. Fuel and power continue to be strong performers for us, where we see positive variance by about $750,000 for fuel and a little over $500,000 for power. Injuries and damages coming in as expected, and security services and other expenses slightly favorable, but mostly due to timing of invoices. So overall, for the month of January, we see total operating expenses favorable by about $3.6 million. When you offset the small shortfall in revenues, we're positive for the month of January, $3.3 million net. So again, very good first month performance here vis-a-vis the 21 budget. Next page, please. With regard to our public funding, we see for the month in a total aggregate number of just around $3 million negative to budget. We see sales tax, again, this is relative to the November 2020 collections, about $8 million down to budget. But interestingly, that's only about the total collection of $38.4 million is only about 7.5% below the prior year. So again, fairly strong performance, albeit off of budgeted expectations. PTF for the month coming in strong at $3.3 million above our budgeted numbers. Same with the real estate transfer tax coming in a little over $2 million positive to the budget. So again, overall, about $3 million off of our budgeted expectations, driven primarily due to the November 2020 sales tax collections. Next page, please. With regard to the year-to-date numbers, we've split this into two different charts here. First, I'll cover 2020, and then we'll talk about 2021 now that we're kind of lapping over into 2021 collections. We've received most of the public funding revenues through the year, albeit sales tax, we still have 1 month outstanding for December, but through November, we're down about $62 million on an annual basis. For PTF, we're down about $37.5 million. For RET, about $17.6 million, and the PTF on RET about $3 million, and a little under $1 million on ICE funding. So overall, year to date, with 1 month remaining for sales tax and for ICE, we're down about $120 million to budget. Again, the CARES funding has been a critical component on closing the gap for 2020, as well as what we'll do for 2021. Next page, please. With regard to 21 collections, again, we're still finalizing the collection results for 2020 for sales tax, so we don't have numbers available yet for 2021. But the numbers that we do have for public funding through February were positive by about $6.5 million. Through January for RET, we're a little over $2 million positive. So overall, we're about $8.5 million positive year to date. But again, we're still waiting for collections to come in on sales tax. So, again, we'll continue to update the board on the coming months as to how this continues to shake out. But again, a good positive momentum shift in seeing positive trajectory here in our variance to budget. Next page, please. With regards to our CARES Act draws, we have been drawing over the course of the last year, between 40 and 50, plus million on a monthly basis. This month, again, we're at that, 53.7 amount. System generated revenue draw is a little bit higher as it typically is every year. January is a high expense, lower revenue month. So again, we see about $54 million draw. That results in about $500 million being drawn on a year-to-date basis. About $817 million was allocated in the first CARES draw or first CARES allocation. So we've drawn about 62% of that total CARES 1 package. The RTA board will be taking this month the CARES 2 allocations. And those allocations will help us offset the remaining balance of the 2021 projected budget gap. So again, we're excited about that, as well as the federal government's continued commitment for a CARES 3 package that is still working its way through the congressional approval process. But again, we're very excited about the continued commitment from Congress for CARES funding. Again, this is something that we will continue to need in the coming months and coming years. So again, this is a very critical component for us to offset shortfalls in both ridership-related revenues and public funding. Next page, please. With regard to the three commodities that we purchased, again, we're finalizing the process for the RFPs that we have out for fuel and natural gas. We're fully locked in for where we want to be for 2021. We are looking for selective opportunities to buy outer years. While the market has gone up, it's still, at kind of lower end of the historic ranges. So we will look for selective opportunities to continue to buy, particularly, on the fuel side. The spot price is only a couple of pennies above our blended rate for 2021, which was one of our lowest rates historically that we've ever seen. So again, it's a good market to continue to look for selective opportunities. But again, we'll look for the market to relax a little bit, particularly on the natural gas side after the winter usage starts to ebb. That concludes my prepared remarks with regard to the FAB for January. Glad to answer any questions.
Can you explain what we did to have such a strong performance, and how do February looks?
So we're still closing the books on February. Obviously, though, the weather in February was a little harsher than what we saw in January. So that would potentially impact our expenses as well as potentially the revenues. So again, we'll be updating the board next month on that once we close the books there. But again, we were trying to put together projections in the 21 budget. We extrapolate those over the various months, and what we had expected with regard to our fare box revenues and our which were pretty much online where we had projected in the 21 budget. And then what we were projecting with regard to public funding, that came in, actual results came in a little bit better than our projected results in the 21 budget. So again, I think what we've seen is the economy starting to rebound. There are some storm clouds on the horizon, so I don't want to get too overly optimistic, on that. But again, we've seen a very strong rebound in the economy, after the early dip. And again, we're happy to see outperformance vis-a-vis the budget. But again, it's just 1 month. I don't want to draw too many conclusions out of the trend off of 1 month. We'll continue to see how things pan out, like I said, in February. And then as we start hopefully getting back to normal, throughout the year. So, again, we've got a long road to go. But, again, we're glad to see some positive variance here, at least for the month of January.
Keep it up. Good.
Director Silva, I want to add a little bit more context to Jeremy's comments about the funding that we may be expecting from Congress. Currently, the House is actually voting today on the emergency relief bill that would contain over $30 billion for transit as part of that bill itself. We anticipate, based on the numbers as they're currently set up, that the region should receive around 1.5 billion of that. That has to then be divided up between Wisconsin and Illinois. And once that negotiation takes place, the remainder will be divided up between CTA, Metro, and PACE. I suspect a substantial portion of that 1.5 billion will be coming into our region. And the expectation around that is, of course, that this is the funding that's going to have to really carry us through 2022 and 2023. How that will be divided between Metro, CTA, PACE still needs to be decided. RTA will start those discussions later this year, and we'll obviously keep the board apprised of what it is that comes out of that. Clearly, based on our 3-year budget projection, we're expecting, a substantial deficit for both next year and the year after, barring, as Jeremy pointed out, other factors that may start to, move in our direction. The other thing that we're, of course, concerned about is what the state budget looks like and whether or not they will incur additional cuts on the public funding side. And that still has yet to be determined at the state legislature. I would also point out that the budget or the bill that's being proposed by the federal government will also contain a substantial amount of funding for state and local governments, which we hope will offset the desire to need to cut subsidies like CTAs and the transit side, but it's still too early for us to know that. So I think what Jeremy is saying, and I would echo, is that things look good right now, recognizing that we're looking at a budget that is substantially reduced from what we were experiencing just, a year ago. And we have a lot of potential for stabilization from the funding we're going to get from the federal government, but there's still a lot of other levers that have to be worked out here and a lot of other decisions that have to occur before we'll have comfort about what our fiscal situation is going to look like over the next couple of years. But the good news is, at least for this year, we're looking like we're in good shape and should be able to move forward this year without any significant challenges around the funding that we currently have.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Chairman Silva?
I'm all right now.
You're okay? All right. Director Alvarez, any questions from you?
And Jeremy, can you just elaborate a little bit on the needs-based analysis that we used with regards to the CARES 2 funding to the CTA?
Yeah, so in the discussions with the RTA, we just outlined the fact that, what our needs are, with regard to the projected shortfalls that we would see in 2021. And, again, just kind of outlining that we've continued to have to deliver full service based on the ridership trends that we've seen and continue to deliver safe and efficient service has driven, a substantial projected shortfall for 2021. Based on that, shortfall, they made a determination, based on some metrics that they were using, with regard to needs-based analysis to allocate the funding to the service boards. And again, we're seeing, a large allocation from that CARES 2 package to the CTA so that we can, again, help offset the shortfalls that we're projecting, and it would subsequently also help the shortfalls that both Metra and PACE are expecting as well. So again, we're, I think the region, the RTA as a region was trying to be fair in allocating the monies, at this point in time to the agencies that needed it at this point in time. The determinations with regard to CARES 3 allocations will be worked out in the coming weeks, and there may be a different set of metrics used in that allocation process. But again, for CARES 2 funding, again, they looked at, who needed what, when and where, and made the allocations appropriately.
Great, thank you. No
Director
more
Rosales,
questions.
I would clarify one thing that Jeremy said. I don't think the allocation for the CARES 3 funding is going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I think maybe in the next couple of months, but it's not going to happen that fast. It's going to take them, I'm sure, some period of time just to negotiate with Indiana and Wisconsin over how much gets divided between the three of us. So my expectation is that in the next, I'd say by sometime this spring, the conversation will begin around this next allocation so that Jeremy can then figure out how that feeds into our budget for the upcoming year.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, President Carter. Director Miller, any questions?
No question, just congratulations to the team. It's good to see some favorable movement there. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Irvine?
No questions. Thanks.
Director Jakes?
No questions. I echo the sentiments of Director Miller.
Thank you, Paul. There are no further questions, Chairman Silva, so you may proceed to agenda item number 4.
Our next order of business is the review of an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. Jeremy.
Thank you. I'm Jeremy Fine, your Chief Financial Officer, and today for your consideration, I present a proposal for an IGA between the CTA in the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. DCFS wishes to make bulk purchases of limited use paper Ventra tickets for distribution to its clients determined to be in need of transportation assistance. This process replaces an outdated and cumbersome process that DCFS had in place for transportation assistance for years prior. Under this IGA, DCFS will place orders with CTA for Ventra tickets via the Ventra Group Sales order form without prepayment, and the CTA will thereafter invoice DCFS, and when payment is received, CTA will pay Cubic. The IGA commences upon board approval and execution and continues until June 30, 2023, but may be canceled by either party before the date upon 90 days written request. CTA has this arrangement with many other governmental agencies, but the DCFS policy, internal policy that they have, requires an IGA for annual spends in excess of $20,000. They're expecting the expenditure levels based on prior usage to be about $50,000. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for your consideration.
Is this agreement the first time, or this is we just following the old one that we used to have?
Yeah, so this is the first time that we will have an IGA agreement with DCFS. We have sold Fair Media, DCFS has used Fair Media for years for their clients that need transportation assistance. But what had to happen previously is if somebody needed that assistance, they went to the DCFS office, requested it. Springfield sent them a voucher that took 3 to 5 days to receive in the mail. And then they would have to take that voucher to a Jewel grocery store and have that converted into Fair Media. Obviously, that's a very cumbersome process and really didn't align with the transportation needs of the customers of DCFS. So, this will streamline that process. The DCFS office will be able to hand out the Fair Media there at that point, when the request is made and the need is identified. So again, this will streamline and better align DCFS customers' transportation needs with the actual receipt of the Fair Media. So again, this kind of conforms with other agreements that we have out there. We're excited to get DCFS onto the group sales platform. And again, I think it will be a huge benefit to the ultimate users of the Fair Media.
Good. Thank you.
Director Alvarez-Rosales?
Chairman, it just sounds like a much more efficient way of doing it. Are we looking at other agencies that we could streamline as well?
Yeah, we're looking across the board. This one, was probably a little bit of an outlier, but we are looking to obviously streamline any process like this, because this is just kind of novating into the 21st century here. So we're very excited about this. But we will look for other opportunities if they are still out there. But this one was a little bit of an outlier. So we're excited to get them on board onto the group sales platform.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Director Miller?
No questions.
Director Irvine?
No questions. Good work. Thank you.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
There are no further questions on this item, Chairman Silva.
Since there are no further questions, may I have leave to place this item on the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Jakes and Irvine. That's all we have for the ordinances today, sir. So we may proceed to the contracts now, starting with contract number A1.
Our next order of business is contract number A1, a rail car service contract.
Questions, Chairman?
My video is
Do you have any questions, Chairman Silva?
No, I don't have questions.
You don't have any? Okay. Director Alvarez-Rosales?
No questions.
Director Miller?
No question.
Director Irvine?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
Chairman, we're finished with questions, so we may move to A2.
Our next order of business is contract A2, uniform contract.
Chairman Silva?
Yeah,
questions?
We've been giving uniforms, okay, to our people for how many years now?
Probably since the creation of CTA.
Yeah. So is this the first time, okay, that we change it?
No. Our uniform contract has evolved over time, and as has our collective bargaining agreements that dictate how we handle uniforms with our bargain for employees.
So it's part of the labor agreements.
Yes, the labor agreement dictates how much we will pay our employees for their uniforms. We control what the uniforms look like in terms of their style and makeup. And over the years, obviously the style of the uniform has changed, as we've modernized the look and things of that nature. I honestly don't remember the last time that we updated our actual uniform itself. And Don, I don't know if you remember when we did that. It's been quite a while, I know that.
It's been over 20 years.
Yeah.
It's been over 20 years since we made some slight changes over the last few years, but any major changes, it's been over 20 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Alvarez, any questions?
No, just compliments. I think on the choices, they've done studies where they show that a lot of times what you wear to work or what you have to wear really does affect your self-esteem. And I think they look really great. And also compliments on the fact that we were able to get 100% DB participation. We found somebody very qualified that's done this type of work before and that is, a DBE. So huge kudos, because I know that all of it was not an easy task, and the team did a great job on this, I think. So thank you for that.
Director Miller, any questions?
No question, thank you.
Director Irvine.
No questions. Just echoing Director Elba Rosales' kudos for getting this whole contract to a DBE. So good work. Well done.
And Director Jakes.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you all. Chairman Silva, we may now proceed to contract B as in boy 1.
Our next order of business is contract number B1, fire protection contract.
Director Silva? Any questions? None? Director Alvarez.
No questions.
Director Miller.
No question.
Director Irvine.
No questions.
Director Jakes.
No questions.
All right. Chairman Silva, we may now go to contract B2.
Our next order of business is contract number B2, a change order to 95th Street Station contract.
Chairman Silva.
No questions.
Director Alvarez.
My clicker is not working well. No questions.
That's technology for you. Director Miller.
No question.
Director Irvine.
No questions.
Director Jakes.
No questions.
All right. Chairman Silva, we may now proceed. That was B2, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
We may now proceed to contract C as in cat 1.
Our next order of business is a contract number C1, a change order to the James Fair contract.
Questions, Chairman Silva?
No questions.
Director Alvarez.
No questions.
Director Miller.
No questions.
Director Director Irvine.
No questions.
Director Jakes.
No questions.
All right. Chairman, we can now go to C2.
Our next order of business is contract number C2, a payroll management contract.
Questions, Chairman Silva?
No questions.
Director Alvarez.
No questions.
Director Miller.
No question.
Director Irvine.
No questions.
Director Jakes.
No questions.
Chairman, before we move to the next item, we need a motion to recommend board approval of contract number C2. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion to recommend board approval of contract number C2, the payroll management contract, has been moved by Director Jakes and seconded by Director Irvine. So I will now take a roll call vote on that matter. Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Alvarez.
I'll recuse myself from this vote. Thanks.
All right, Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion to approve C2 passes with 4 yes votes and 1 recusal. So now, Chairman Silva, we may proceed to contract number G as in girl 1.
Our next order of business is contract number G1, a mechanical engineering contract.
Chairman Silva?
Yes, can you tell us, about the DBE participation in this contract?
Good morning, Director. On contract G1, the subcontracting opportunities were too small to set a DBE goal. So there was no DBE goal set on this contract.
Okay, thank you.
Director Alvarez?
No questions.
Director Miller?
No question.
Director Irvine?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
All right, Chairman Silva, may go to G as in girl 2.
Next order of business is contract number G2, a software licensing contract.
Chairman Silva? Any questions, Chairman?
No.
No? Okay. Director Alvarez.
Just curious, does this have a DBE go under it, on it? Not quite sure.
No, Director, it does not have a DBE goal. Because this is a piggyback and it's also to provide the licensing, there are no subcontracting opportunities.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Juan Pablo. Director Miller?
No questions.
Director Irvine?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
No questions.
All right, Chairman, we may now proceed to contract number J as in July 1.
Our next order of business is contract number J1, a change order to an insurance contract. Is this the one with Mesero?
This is the change order we're asking for the Mesero contract. We're just asking to extend it by 2 months so that it will now expire in August.
And then will expire in August, and we will renew.
We will be bringing a new contract before the board for your approval when this contract expires. Well, prior to its expiration.
How many years has Mesero been filling this contract?
I don't have that information, but I will be happy to get it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Director Alvarez?
There's an RFP that's already been let out, and then we're just trying to make a decision on it, Ellen?
That's correct. But we're also, one of the issues is that we're in the process of working on a renewal for property insurance. And we didn't want to have this, if we change vendors, we didn't want to have that occur during this process.
Right. Mesero, Vice Chair, is the broker that's currently working on the renewal of our property insurance, which will come before the board, I think, in June.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just really to bridge the gap in case, as Ellen pointed out, they do not get the next RFP, because we can't obviously start with a new broker negotiate a particular renewal.
No, that makes sense, actually. Okay, great. Thank you.
Director Miller?
No questions.
Director Irvine?
No questions.
Director Jakes?
No questions. Thank you for your clarification, Karen. That helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chairman Silver, we may now proceed to contract number J2.
Our final order of business is contract number J2, administrative management contract.
Chairman Silva,
No questions.
Director Alvarado Rosales,
No questions.
Director Miller,
No questions.
Director Irvine,
No questions.
Director Jakes.
No questions.
All right, we're finished with the contract, Chairman. We may now proceed to 6A.
Since there are no further questions on the contract, may I have leave to place 9 contracts on the omnibus?
So moved.
Second.
Motion to leave 9 contracts, which does not include C2, onto the omnibus has been moved by Director Jakes and seconded by Director Irvine. They have now been placed on the omnibus. So we may proceed to number 6B, sir.
Since there is no further business to come before the committee, may I have a motion to approve the omnibus and recommend the omnibus for board approval?
So moved.
And I second.
Moved and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I'll now take a roll call vote on the omnibus. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Alvarado Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes. And so, Chairman, we can move to committee agenda item number 6.
And finally, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Jakes and Irvine. I'll take a vote. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Alvarado Rosales,
Yes.
Chairman Silva.
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes. We are adjourned, and we're going to take a short break before the start. Good morning. This is Greg Longini again, and we are ready to start the next meeting. Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to
Morning.
call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Chicago Transit Board for March 10th, 2021. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes, Director Miller,
Here.
Director Jakes,
Here.
Director Irvine,
Here.
Director Silva,
Here.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Here.
We have a quorum with all 5 members of the board present, and let the record also show that President Carter and General Counsel Karen Simons are also participating in this meeting.
Thank you, Greg. Our first order of business today is public comment. Greg?
Yes, today we have 5 public comment speakers. They're all waiting to speak. And I ask each of them to please try to limit your remarks to approximately 3 minutes. And we will begin with Miss Dorothy Bell. And if Miss Bell, if you could unmute your phone, you may start speaking to the board. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dorothy Bell, and I'm a resident at the Calvin Park Senior Suites. And we have 84 apartments in this building, and the majority of us depends on CTA. And I would like to start off with something positive. We're located on Cicero, and actually the bus comes in a timely manner. They're on time, and that's one of the great positive things about CTA. Now, my concern is that I am a senior citizen, and one of the things I would like to address is safety hours and safety when we're on the bus. And the safety hours, if it could, coincide with the store hours when we're going out shopping, grocery shopping, and for our personal items, that would be wonderful. And I think most of the time, the safety hours is anywhere from 8 to 10 a.m., I'm sorry. And I would like to feel safe, and maybe around that time we could have security on the bus during those times. Now, here at the Senior Suites, we used to have a driver that comes and take us out like twice a month. However, because of the pandemic, they're no longer doing that. So we have to provide these things on our own, and we're currently taking CTA now. However, one of the concerns is safety matters on the CTA line. And that is a big issue for the majority of us here as seniors at Calvin Park.
Yeah, Ms. Bell, thank you so much, first of all, for putting this issue and information before us. Can I ask, the Senior Suites, is it on Cicero and what other street? What's the cross street?
Near Diversity.
You're near Diversity. Okay, got it.
Yes.
All right. Well, I really want to thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're getting out. I'm sorry to hear, that you feel unsafe. But we really appreciate, on my behalf and on behalf of the board and everybody at CTA, you coming before us and sharing this with us. What I'd like to do, and we will also get a follow-up from this individual, is ask Chief Safety and Security Officer Nancy Ellen Sussman to reach out to you and to try to address some of your concerns that you raised here today. And we will hear back from Nancy and get more information on how this is going. But I really, really do sincerely want to thank you for coming and sharing this information with us today.
What's the person's name? I'm sorry.
Sure.
The individual's name?
Sure. It's Chief Safety and Security Officer Nancy Ellen, and the last name is spelled Zusman. And we'll make sure that they reach out to you. I know Greg will help coordinate this as well.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, and stay safe, and we will do our best to work with you on this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. And our next speaker today will be Susan Hurley. Susan?
Thank you, Greg. Good morning. My name is Susan Hurley. I am Executive Director of Chicago Jobs with Justice. We are a coalition of 40 organizations in Chicago advocating for workers' rights and economic and social justice. We are also proud to be part of the Jobs to Move America coalition in Illinois. We believe public agencies like the Chicago Transit Authority should spend our public dollars on companies that pay living wages and benefits and that invest in training and job opportunities, in particular for Black and Brown communities who face overlapping barriers to quality employment. Companies receiving our public dollars through CTA contracts should be high road employers. That's why I'm speaking today in support of CTA's ongoing work to create a permanent good jobs purchasing policy. As the board may know, the Jobs to Move America Coalition submitted a model policy to CTA back in September that would incorporate the U.S. employment plan into CTA's procurements of trains and buses permanently going forward. I am encouraged to hear that CTA staff continue to engage in conversations about a robust policy. I hope to see these conversations move forward in a substantial way and that the CTA will incorporate key policy recommendations from this coalition, the Jobs to Move America Coalition, as our organizations are working with the unemployed and underemployed on a regular basis. There should be no delay by the CTA's board in adopting a good jobs policy. The longer we wait, the longer we leave family supporting jobs and equity on the table. Now more than ever, including during the pandemic, we need CTA to adopt a permanent policy that makes our purchases on behalf of Chicago work for people. We should insist that companies we contract with make jobs, pay, training, and equity commitments. And likewise, we should commit as the CTA board and community stakeholders that we're going to hold companies accountable to their commitments and that we're going to commit to transparency, allowing the public to see the commitments that companies are making. I commend CTA for recently using the U.S. employment plan language for the first time in a bus contract. And I look forward to CTA building on this progress with a permanent good jobs policy that will bring long-term change for workers and communities. We are committed to working with the board and Illinois Jobs to Move America to make this a strong policy. And thank you for allowing me to address the board this morning.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley, for coming before the board. We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Our next speaker will be James White. Mr. White?
Yes, good morning. My name is James White. I'm the Director of Strategic Campaigns for the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, also known as SMART. We represent over 200,000 members across Chicago, Illinois, and the rest of the country, including sheet metal workers, service technicians, bus operators, railroad engineers and conductors, welders, production and manufacturing employees, and more. We are also a proud member of the Jobs to Move America Coalition, which is working to develop a recruitment and training program to place women, African Americans, Latinos, returning citizens, and veterans in new jobs at the railcar plant on the southeast side of Chicago. This factory is building CTA's newest railcars. SMART, alongside other labor, community, and workforce development groups, are working to make sure this factory will provide middle-class careers for folks who are not traditionally employed in manufacturing. We are proud to see CTA's railcar contract resulted in investments in the people of Chicago. CTA must ensure purchases, like the railcar contract and the most recent diesel bus contract, continue to include benefits for working people. I am asking you to set a date to pass a good jobs policy for a permanent U.S. employment plan, and to pass it quickly and with a strong language. If done right, the policy would leverage CTA's purchases to help address the growing skills gap in manufacturing, the rise in temporary or unstable employment, and the lack of diversity in the trades workforce. CTA's policies should encourage companies competing for contracts to create and retain full-time jobs, invest in pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeships, on-the-job training, and workforce developmental programs, and train and hire people who have historically been excluded or underrepresented in manufacturing. Through the policy, CTA can use our public dollars to raise labor and equity standards in the manufacturing industry including in the emerging electric bus industry. This is especially important as CTA begins its transition to an electric bus fleet. Many of our members are struggling to get by in the pandemic, and we need CTA to act. Don't wait to do this policy. Help create good family-sustaining jobs and careers. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak to the board.
Thank you. Thanks for coming before the board, and thanks for all the work that Smart Union is doing. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. White. Our next speaker will be Wahlberg. Please unmute Natalie, and you may address the board.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm Natalie Wahlberg, Illinois Coalition Organizer with Jobs to Move America, which works at the intersection of racial, economic, and environmental justice to ensure that public dollars advance a more equitable economy and healthier environment. We convened the local coalition of labor, workforce development, and community organizations that developed a good jobs policy, which we presented to CTA this past September. We were thrilled to have President Carter speak at our press conference last week, where mayors and transit agency leaders from across the country joined us to call for an end to the ban on local hire for federally funded infrastructure procurements. It's great to see CTA leading on this important effort. We hope CTA can continue to demonstrate itself as a leader in good jobs and equity by moving forward with the proposed policy our coalition presented last fall. As we're faced with worsening economic inequality and environmental crises, this moment calls for the board to pass a strong jobs policy to make the U.S. employment plan a permanent part of CTA's purchases of rail cars and buses. It's not only a crucial moment, but an opportune one for CTA to adopt a policy to leverage public spending on transit infrastructure to build up our communities with good jobs and living wages. The federal government's Build Back Better recovery plan is expected to bring significant infrastructure investment, and CTA should be poised to get the most out of this additional federal support for communities left behind. We want to see CTA be a leader in helping position our city for an equitable economic recovery. The board should adopt a good jobs policy that strongly signals that every public dollar CTA spends matters in creating career opportunities for marginalized workers, especially in the clean energy economy. It has now been 18 months since CTA was directed to implement a good jobs policy, and I encourage the board to pass this policy as soon as possible so that our public transit dollars can support jobs that lift up our communities. I look forward to the U.S. employment plan becoming a permanent tool in CTA's purchases to advance good jobs and equity. Now is the time to change the rules in CTA's purchases to maximize the benefits for communities most often denied good-paying jobs. The CTA would be the largest transit agency in the country to adopt this kind of policy. By passing a strong jobs policy, CTA can set a national example for how other government agencies across the country can leverage our public dollars for an economic recovery coming out of the pandemic. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking with you all in the future.
Thank you, Natalie Wahlberg. Thank you. We appreciate your time, your words, and your time as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Our final speaker today, Chairman, is Mr. Leone Bicchiere. So Leone, if you want to unmute your phone and address the board, go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I unmute?
Yes, you sound very clear, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. So good morning, President Carter, Vice Chair Alvaro Sales, and the whole CTA board. My name is Leone Jose Bicchiere. I'm the founder and executive director of Working Family Solidarity. We work in several disinvested neighborhoods on Chicago's west, southwest, and south sides, which are largely African American and Latinx. Our mission is to improve workplace conditions and advocate for equitable hiring practices and equitable development. And last year, we've been working a lot to support workers during the pandemic. People out here are really hurting, as you all know, which is why my organization, as part of the Jobs to Move America Coalition, has been working with the CTA on the Good Jobs policy. Our proposed policy We would hope then that companies bidding for CTA contracts would make commitments around the number of manufacturing jobs that they will create or retain, the wages and benefits they'll provide, and their plans to train and hire workers who face major barriers to employment. A lot of our members, such as people with a history in the criminal justice system or just very low income. And it's a way to incorporate jobs, equity, and training into CTA's contracts with companies. We need the board support to make sure that this policy empowers low-income workers and workers of color, which are about 90 to 95% of our members. And my organization works with people who are employed, but also a lot who are unemployed and seeking work, people who are underemployed, people who are contingent, work 1 to 3 times a week, whatever they can get, sometimes at different jobs. No benefits, no job security, no avenue for earning better wages and more hours. I really encourage CTA to use its position as the nation's second largest public transit system to ensure that our public dollars go to companies that take care of their workers. Companies receiving our public money should build high-quality buses and rail cars and be good employers that treat workers who make our vehicles with dignity and respect. Our coalition would love to have the opportunity to meet with the board and tell you more about our proposed policy at some point in the future, and I thank you very much for giving me time today.
Thank you. Thank you also for the work that you're doing in the communities with the working family solidarity. Thanks so much for that. So I am Mexican. You said you're Mexican Italian, so I want to see if I say your name correctly. Leon Jose Bicchieri, is that correct? Did I do?
Really close. Well, you said it like my Mexican side of the family says it. So I can't say no. My Italian side, dad's from Italy, mom's from Mexico. Leone is the Italian version of Leon. So I actually got Leone Jose. And then Bicchieri Gonzalez, I spared you guys the full name today.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming before us. And I do want to thank all of the speakers. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Leone.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Leone, as well. Chairman Alvaro Rosales, that concludes the public comment portion of today's meeting.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, we will move on now. And our next order of business today is the... Pardon me?
Yes, President Carter wants to say something.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Before you move on, can I just say something in response to the speakers who raised the U.S. employment plan with you? First of all, I want the board to know that the principles behind which JMA is making this request to the board certainly align with the principles that I believe in as president of CTA. I believe that as a public agency, we should be leveraging and should be finding ways to leverage public dollars to support particularly disenfranchised communities, communities of color, communities who have faced traditional barriers that have prevented them from being able to get well-paying, good jobs that allow them to support their family and their communities. That is one of the reasons why I have been probably one of the strongest voices in the transit industry in support of the U.S. employment plan, as well as the other principles that JMA has been pursuing that would be supportive of these endeavors. In fact, as you know, not only have we pursued these options with regards to our rail car procurement and our bus procurement, but we also are pursuing them right now with regards to RPM and the local hiring, the local hiring and the programs we put in place to really create the pipeline to provide through that project the types of jobs that would be supportive of the goals that have been expressed by our commenters today. I also want to let you know that I am working on a proposal to present to the board later this year that will cover a broader holistic view of how CTA should conduct its business in an inclusive and diverse environment. And that policy, as I envision it, which you will hear more about in the future, will not only, in my opinion, address the concerns that are being raised by JMA in terms of the board establishing the principles by which CTA will conduct its business, but will also address many of the other issues that I know the board feels deeply about in terms of how we conduct our business, be it in the way we provide our services, in the way we engage the community, and in the way in which we ultimately support the communities that we serve on a daily basis in our role as CTA. So I ask you to be patient while I put this together. I'm actually working with an organization that I know many of you are familiar with, both because of the organization and because of one of their leaders, CNT and Jackie Grimshaw, who have generously agreed to support CTA in developing the principles that I want to present to you at a later date. And I believe that when we present this broader policy to you, it will be not only something that the board will readily embrace, it will also reflect what, in my opinion, has been the position and approach that the board has taken with CTA staff ever since I've been a part of this of CTA, in ensuring that we're doing everything that we can to address the inequities that exist in areas of this city that we serve through those dollars that we ultimately spend in a very public way to support CTA and its daily services. So I want you to know that there's nothing that I heard in these comments that I would take strong objection to. In fact, as one of the commenters mentioned, I actually have been involved in press events advocating for the things that they want. And I certainly understand their desire to want to be sure that the agency as a whole has institutionalized many of the concepts that I've developed and created on a case-by-case basis here at CTA. But I certainly believe that it should be my legacy as CEO and ultimately your legacy as board members to put in place a broader policy that will ultimately indicate and show the board's support, as you have already done, in a much broader way in support of the principles that have been discussed by these commenters today. So thank you for just giving me the opportunity to clarify some of that.
Thank you, President Carter. Did you say you have a sort of a timeline when you're going to be sharing this with us?
It's my hope to do it later this year. I suspect that it will be sometime this summer. I don't have a specific date that I'm going to present this to you. We have developed an MOU with CNT that has time parameters around the deliverables that they need to give to us. Those deliverables will ultimately feed into the document that I'm talking about that the board will adopt. But certainly before the end of this year, the board will have in front of it a policy document for its consideration.
Great, thank you. Great. So we'll go to our next order of business today, which is the approval of the February 10th board minutes. The minutes were previously distributed. So I would now like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of February 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
That motion has been moved by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I'll now take a vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Irvine?
Yes.
Director Silva? Director Silva? Have you unmuted Director Silva? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so you're voting yes on the minutes. Thank you. Chairman Alvaro Rosales?
Yes.
That motion is approved, ma'am, with 5 yes votes.
Okay, thank you. Our next order of business is executive session, and it is my understanding that today we will have executive session. Is that correct, Karen?
Yes, Vice Chair, we will have a short executive session pursuant to Section 2, Paragraph C, Subparagraph 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. I'll now entertain a motion to recess into executive session for the reasons stated by our counsel.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I'll now take a vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Irvine?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales?
Yes.
That motion is approved with 5 yes votes, and we are now recessed into executive session. This is Gregory Longini of the CTA Board Office. Chairman Alvaro Rosales, we are ready to proceed.
Great, thank you so much. I will now entertain a motion to return to open session of the March 10th, 2021 CTA regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I'll take a vote. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Yes.
Excuse me, that motion has passed, Chairman, and we are back in open session now.
Great, thank you. The board will now consider agenda item number 4A, an item discussed in executive session. Karen?
Thank you, Vice Chair. In executive session, we discussed the lawsuit of Joseph Morgan versus Sunday Ajayi and the CTA. This lawsuit involves an accident which occurred on June 6, 2019 at 8:44 a.m. when the plaintiff, Joseph Morgan, was struck and sustained severe injuries while riding a bike in the bike lane on Hubbard Street, actually on Wells Street near Hubbard. And the CTA bus rear-ended him and ran him over. The plaintiff has now indicated a willingness to accept in full settlement of this lawsuit, $1,750,000 following a mediation, and the law department recommends settlement in that amount.
Thank you, Karen. I will now entertain a motion to approve an ordinance recommending a settlement of $1,750,000 in the case of Joseph Morgan versus Sunday Ajayi and the Chicago Transit Authority, case number 19L006846.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I will now take a vote. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Yes.
That motion to approve the settlement offer is approved with 5 yes votes.
Thank you, Greg. Our next order of business is a report from the Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget. Director Silva?
The Committee on Finance, Audit, and Budget met earlier this morning via Zoom video teleconference. The committee approved the February 10, 2021 committee minutes. The committee reviewed the finance report. The committee also reviewed the following ordinance: an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services for the purchase of Ventra tickets. The committee also reviewed 10 purchase and sales award recommendations. The committee approved all items and recommends board approval for all items. The committee placed the ordinance and 9 contracts on the omnibus. And that concludes my report, Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Thank you, Director Silva. May I now have a motion to approve the omnibus as stated by Director Silva?
So moved.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. I'll now take a vote. Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Jakes,
Yes.
Director Irvine,
Yes.
Director Silva,
Yes.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales.
Yes.
Yes. You said yes, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yes. The motion to approve the omnibus has passed with 5 yes votes.
Thank you. Director Silva, we
No, we now need that motion.
Right. I will now ask for a motion to approve contract number C2.
Yes, C as in cat 2. Yes, that's the motion.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
The motion to approve contract number C as in cat 2 It's been moved by Director Jakes, seconded by Director Irvine. I'll now take the vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Irvine?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Alvaro Rosales?
I'll recuse myself from this vote. Thank
All right.
you.
That motion has been approved with 4 yes votes, and there was one recusal by Chairman Alvaro Rosales. So it's been approved.
Great. Thank you. Our next order of business is the construction report, and we will now hear from Bill Mooney.
Good morning.
Morning.
Herb, whenever you're ready.
One moment.
For the record, Bill Mooney, your Chief Infrastructure Officer. Today I'll begin the construction report where I normally do on our Your New Blue Signal project. The project remains on budget and tight to schedule. Herb, if you can move to the next slide, please. We've had a pretty significant milestone in the project is we've received all the, what they call the books of plans. These are the basic designs for all the relay houses and all the signal system as a whole. Though the great majority, though a few of these are still under review and being revised, the fact that we now, in this next generation technology, have seen the complete design for the package is a pretty significant milestone. It's been a huge hurdle for us as we've been advancing something that's never before been installed kind of in the United States system. We've been working with the vendors on the concepts, how it evolves and stuff, and that's one of the big challenges we've been working on the project. So having that milestone pass has been of great value to us. We also recently received our Harlem Relay House, which is our 5th relay house in the project. Go ahead, Herb, you can switch to the next slide, please. Here you can see it being craned in off the highway onto the right-of-way. Next slide, please. Here they're installing the power for that house to get it up, get the heat going, get the AC going. At the time it was craned in, it was pretty cold out. This happened right about the time of the major snowstorm. So we actually were bouncing that crane in around kind of a series of weather events. Next slide. And here they started pulling the wiring into the house. So this is from one of the junction boxes in the field. I've shown you other slides of this where what happens is we ultimately pull wiring from these junction boxes back into the house and then from the junction boxes to the wayside equipment. So they've started actually wiring up this house as well. We continue to commission Nagel interlocking, which is the interlocking just south of this house. We are actually operating on the new track circuits there, which I reported last month, and we're in the process of putting the interlocking in service and finishing up the testing with that. And shortly after that, then we'll begin the commissioning process for this Harlem house as they've advanced the wiring there, and we should be running on that in the near future. We continue to progress Cumberland, which is the next relay house down the line, Old Manheim and River Road, which are the other kind of standalone relay houses for smaller interlockings, are all pretty much fabricated at this point and been through the testing and commissioning process in the plant. And so they have scheduled ship dates to the area. And we continue to advance kind of the final packages around the major interlockings at Rosemont and O'Hare, and we'll look to start doing some of that work this summer. So the project continues to advance forward through the winter as well as kind of through the pandemic. Next project, please, sir. My last project for you today is our traction power upgrades and transformer replacement project. The project moves on schedule and on budget. Next slide, please. As I mentioned last month, all the work has been focused around our last site at Franklin Substation. These are a different type of transformer. These are what they call oil type transformers, where the previous ones we've talked about are dry type transformers. So this site actually had some remediation associated with the transformers, where we had to clear out some soil around the pad in a preparation to kind of actually expand the pad, but also we actually had to remediate the pad itself. So what you're seeing in here is that excavation of the soil and actually the cleaning effort around this pad. Over many, many years of this site, the pad actually does get some seepage of oil from the transformers, and that's what the pad's purpose is to collect that oil. And so we actually had to remediate the concrete so we could top it off and expand it for the new transformers when they come on site in the upcoming months. Next slide, please. And part of that effort was actually the whole site was tented in the middle of winter, and we actually had to bring in a bunch of heat to superheat the area to actually sweat out any impurities that were in the pad so that it could be properly cleaned. So that was actually kind of an interesting task in the middle of February when we were at some of our coldest days of the month and of the winter as a whole, to be able to kind of completely seal that off and then heat it up and be able to sweat that out of the concrete. And with that, that concludes my portion of the construction report.
Thank you, Bill. You know, I just want to comment that thank you for continuing all this work with the severe weather that we had. I know everybody ended up being hands on deck and just moving everything forward. But I mean, you've got these relay houses, the transformer, the oil cleaning, et cetera, so much. And yet, you know, I know everybody also had to be involved with the severe weather that we had, the cold, and then the inordinate amount of snow. So, you know, just really thank the team for keeping everything moving forward. I know everybody was involved in that one. We really appreciate it. It sounds like there wasn't even a delay in any of the work that you've been doing. So,
you know, we plan in our schedule for some weather-related incidents, you know, throughout kind of that in the flow to that schedule. And so there may be a day or two during the actual snow where the work slows down, or really it gets reprogrammed, and we try and focus on stuff that's more inside activities. That's one of those benefits of kind of the signal relay house work, is a lot of it happens in the house itself. So once we get those cables kind of terminated from that field post, all the wiring and a lot of that testing occurs inside that building. So it's really about how we look at the phasing and we work around this. But I will certainly pass your comments along to the team, who, I mean, and they do a great job.
They do. Yes, they do. No more questions for me, but I'll go through and ask the rest of the directors. Director Jakes, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Director Irvine?
No questions. I just want to say I think this may be the first transformer sauna that I've ever seen. So kudos to you and the team for creating that, and it was fun to see. And I just want to reiterate, great job for your whole team. Continue to work through the winter storm we had and all the snow that's out there. So great work. I know you guys have been working hard and digging deep to push through with all this. So kudos to the whole team.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Director Miller?
I just want to confirm the same as you and Director Irvine, and with the COVID and all, to stay on schedule and all. Just congratulations to the team. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Silva? You might want to unmute.
Yes, and congratulations, okay, for a very good done job.
Thank you.
Thank you. So please let the team know how we all feel, and thank you so much for that.
I will be certain to share your comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. We will now hear from Chris Buchel and Juan Pablo Prieto on the RPM project and diversity.
Thank you. Chris Buchel, your Chief RPM Officer. So the RPM project continues on budget and tight to schedule. We are still working on the design, although that progresses appropriate to the various pieces of construction that are occurring. In the bypass area, we continue working on the bypass itself. We are pouring a concrete deck on top of much of the bypass. You'll see in the slides to come that concrete work continues as weather allows. And then we are doing various pieces of assembly as the deck becomes as the structure goes from being an open deck project to a closed deck project. So behind me, you'll see some photographs of us installing it, and that is really in the area as the bypass kind of comes north of Belmont. It's all solid or enclosed deck, and then as it comes kind of in back north along the Brown Line and attaches to the Brown Line, it's open deck for several hundred feet. So that's what you see behind me. So that work continues. We also are continuing with the corridor signal improvement. That is the larger signal project, although most of our energy is on the signal work that is associated with pre-stage. So as you know, pre-stage over 2020, we installed 2 major interlockings. And since the end of that work in the late fall of 2020 and into this year, we have been working on commissioning the signaling system, really going through a series of very incremental tests to make sure that system is ready for operation. So we have commissioned many aspects of the Montrose interlocking and are now starting to move up to Thorndale. Those 2 interlockings, as you know, along with the temporary stations, are critical to completing the work that's necessary to set the stage for building a segmented box girder for building the 2 major bridges between Lawrence and Bryn Mawr. That work is set to commence in the spring of this year, a major milestone for the project. And as I said, that work at this moment consists of the actual Lawrence to Bryn Mawr segment, and those bridges consists of pouring the various segments for the segmented box girder. You've seen photographs of those segments. They sort of look like sections of your backbones, your spine, really. So if we could advance, Herb, to the next slide. So this is the deck. This is the rebar that's under the deck. We have since poured this section and are now advancing further north. So this is the closed deck section of the bridge. That tower, Clark Tower in front of you, the bridge kind of goes around that and then to the left or the north. And as it gets towards the brown line and connects back to it, that's where it becomes the open deck section. Next, please. The Lawrence to Bryn Mawr segment, as we put a new interlocking in at Montrose, we also are doing some improvements to the structure under that interlocking, all in all with the aim towards increasing speeds through that area. So this is various pieces of work that support that. This is pouring new foundations underneath columns on either side of Montrose and in the area of that interlocking. Next. I mentioned that we were commissioning the signaling system. So this is various pieces of electrical work to support it. Here you see electricians that are connecting and then doing testing on various electrical components. Next slide. And the temporary stations. Yeah, we are advancing the 2 temporary stations at Argyle and Bryn Mawr. Work continues with those despite the challenges associated with the weather. Next. And community outreach continues, most of it virtual. So despite the weather, we've been able to have some very significant meetings with the community. Some of the most significant ones would be the Stage A construction aldermanic briefings. We actually had that meeting, and then more recently a town hall associated with that was very well attended, where we explained as we move into the construction, the first set of construction of that segmented box girder, the impacts associated with that, particularly the ones in and around areas that we're demolishing and then replacing with a new infrastructure. We unveiled the station designs. The 4 stations are not only accessible, but I think they are a community asset as well, beyond that accessibility. So we had good feedback on those stations and praise in general for the designs. We continue meeting with various agencies and chambers of commerce in the area, beyond the aldermen, and coordinating more directly with them and their constituents. And we continue to hold virtual office hours if there are people in the community that have questions regarding upcoming work, particularly as it pertains to impacts to their garages, if they're residences, or impacts to their businesses in regard to parking or garbage pickup, which we would handle in the case of an impact, say like an alley closure. So those meetings, in some ways, the virtual aspects of it make it easier for people to participate, and we've seen very good attendance and responses at all our meetings. We follow up with posting the meeting, recording of the meeting on our website, as well as the questions that were asked and our answers to those questions. So with that, and in regard to workforce and DB, I'll turn it over to Juan Pablo.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, directors. Juan Pablo Prieto, Director of Diversity Programs. So we continue to host our monthly meetings with the prime contractor to discuss DBE and workforce outreach and compliance. We received coverage from Good Day Chicago on our Elevating Future Scholarship on February 16th. We also received coverage on Univision. The application period closed earlier this month, and Chicago scholars will be announcing the winners at April. Walsh Floor hosted a virtual construction employment opportunity meet and greet on February 18th for current union cardholders. We had over 100 participants on the meeting who heard general information about the project and our projected trades. From there, the participants were moved into breakout rooms where they heard about specific opportunities based on the unions that they're already in. When we then came back to the main room and answered more questions, we had great discussion and questions in both the breakout rooms and the main room. We are planning a outreach event for folks who are interested in getting in the trade unions coming up later next month. Although we are not able to host a virtual workshop for the Building Small Businesses session due to an unforeseen circumstance, the team was still able to connect and conduct the one-on-one sessions with the firms that had registered. We wanted to make sure we help firms apply for the Payroll Protection Program, or PPP, and Emergency Injury Disaster Loans, or EIDL, funding that were open for small businesses. I'm happy to report that the BSB team has helped small businesses secure over $5.4 million in financing, which includes PPP, EIDL, working capital, and equipment loans. 4 DBE firms that have participated in BSB have secured contracts on RPM totaling over $13 million. 17 firms have participated in a cohort training run by the Hispanic American Construction Industry Association, or HACIA, and 10 firms have participated in back office training conducted by Sustainable Options for Urban Living, or SOL. And finally, on February 26th, the Workforce Initiatives Group hosted our 9th installment of our Construction Talk series with Cisco and the Pipe Fitters Local 597. The virtual event featured a recorded tour of the union training facility, interviews with members of the local, an interview with the admissions director, and a question and answer period with Cisco and Local 597's admissions director. We had 25 attendees join the live event and received engaging questions from the audience regarding the application process and career benefits of pursuing an apprenticeship with the trades. We are planning our next Construction Talks, which is scheduled for April. All of our Construction Talks videos, as well as other outreach events, are posted on our YouTube channel, CTA Doors Opening. And that concludes my portion of the report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thanks to the two of you. I mean, great work and great press too, I think, from both of the reports. Thank you for that. I don't have any further questions, but I'll ask my fellow Board of Directors. Director Jakes, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Director Irvine?
No questions. It's looking great. Excited to see the bypass come along.
Director Miller?
Sorry, no question. Thank you.
Director Silva?
No questions.
Great, thank you. And thanks again for your report. With no further business to come before us, I'll now ask if we have any new business.
Greg, you're muted.
I just want to, can I take a moment to thank you all for the condolence calls from President and from you, Arabelle. Thank you, cards and all, for your prayers and support of the passing of my mom. And I just want to thank the entire board for the support.
Of course, Director Miller. And our prayers are with you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, I think you're muted. So
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Must have clicked the wrong button. Anyway, Chairman, there is no new business that I am aware of, so I guess there's none.
Great. Well, thank you. With no further business to come before the board, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And I second.
The motion to adjourn has been moved by and seconded by Directors Jakes and Irvine. Let's take a vote. Director Miller?
Yes.
Director Jakes?
Yes.
Director Irvine?
Yes.
Director Silva?
Yes.
Chairman Al Rosales?
Yes.
Chairman, that motion has been approved with 5 yes votes. So I guess we are
Great.
adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thank